right, I'm going to call to order the Planning and Zoning, the Town of St. Paul Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. So it's roughly around 7 o'clock on the 18th of March, 2025. I guess the first order of business is the roll call. So I guess we got to wait till he comes back. No, I mean, I can do it, but
Does he have us rolling on tape?
I
think so.
Okay, so Bob,
Here?
Eric,
Here.
Gary, here, Tammy.
Here?
All right, we have a quorum. We can move to the second and do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, as either one of you guys want to make comments?
I would. Again, my name is Joel Halpin. I'm pastor of Connection Point Church, 2601 Parker Road. We own that. We have an SUP that's been submitted for approval. I think we're going to be up next month. Y'all be reviewing it. So I just wanted to make sure that y'all know who I am. You can reach out. We would love to have any questions, anything resolved before we come for you, and especially the council. So we're really trying to have, we know the struggles that have been with some of the other houses of worship, and so we're trying to make sure y'all know that we want to work with y'all, that we want to just have a great face and have a great relationship. So we're already doing a lot of due diligence with TxDOT and with all of our, everything we've got going. So just want to have a good relationship. And if y'all have any questions, y'all can reach out to me anytime. Connection Point Church, connectionpoint.church is our website, and y'all can reach out to me. You can even get my cell phone before we leave, a card, whatever, and I would love to just be, make this as helpful as possible, anything y'all need from me, so.
I do have a question for you.
Yes.
Have you, what has gone on over there in the last year? Because are you renewing the SUP?
So we were not aware of the last SUP we were approved for, but then when we got the SUP, it had that we have to renew it every 2 years. We didn't know that was a stipulation. It wasn't discussed when we got it approved, but it was on there. And so that's something we'll also, we have a lot of questions about, but we'll try to resolve with the town council and with, I'll talk with Scott as well. But as far as what's gone on over there, so we have not started any construction, but we hope to start very soon with this renewal. We have Weber has leveled our land with, we've been working with TxDOT and with Weber. They needed a place to put dirt, we needed a level land, so they have put dirt there, but as far as nothing, we haven't pulled any permits, haven't started any official process until we're, you'll know when we start, you'll know.
Yeah, I haven't seen it yet, that's why I was asking questions.
Yeah, and we're looking to go as soon as we get this approval, or the SUP renewal.
Okay. You already have an application for an SUP?
Yes, it's been submitted to Scott, and I think next month is, it was a little time-bound crunch to get it here this month, but next month we should have it. Is my understanding.
Okay, all right. Okay. Did you want to say anything, or?
No, I'm just,
okay.
I'm just here to see what's going on.
Okay, no problem. All right. Okay, so if there's no other discussions, then we will move to the regular agenda. And I think the first 4.1 discussion of possible actions regarding the minutes from the last meeting. So if everybody will take a look at the minutes from last time, and then
motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that's approved. We will move on to the second item of the regular agenda, 4.2. Discussion and possible action regarding a proposed fence ordinance. What I'd like to do is start off talking a little bit about it. Just kind of, what I want to do is kind of give you where my head was at when I kind of wrote the proposed one. So, again, the first stab in the dark, or the first stab at it. So it is a proposal, so I'm looking for you guys' input. My general belief when I write one of these things is we've got a lot of ordinances. This is one we didn't have, but we want to keep them straight to the point, short and sweet, but don't miss things that we may need to cover. I did come up with some definitions. I don't know that those definitions need to be in every ordinance, or do we need to put those someplace in our book of ordinances. Either way, maybe it is better to put it next to the ordinance that you're trying to cover. All right, let me see. So first definitions, and then I went into enforcement. Again, I don't really know what enforcement we have today extensively, but obviously maintenance is one of the things we want to make sure we have. Then I got into, okay, what happens if you want to build a fence or construct a fence? So that a building permit would give us a little bit of control about what they're trying to do, a drawing, an application. Again, the numbers, we can change the numbers if you want, and then compliance with standards, of course, that's what the ordinance is about. And then, of course, the building official will inspect it if in fact you followed with the plan that you provided. And then I got into regulation of the fences. Obviously, you can't build a fence on public property, not unless you're managing or you own public property. It shouldn't create a traffic hazard. I know that materials, well, I guess I'll go in order, I won't jump around. But a fence, I debated a lot about whether a wall, a berm, or should even belong in a fence ordinance, because they can affect drainage. And also they can collect debris, which could be nothing more than leaves, or it could collect other stuff, garbage and stuff like that. It obviously shouldn't be put in any kind of floodway area or anything that's owned by the Texas waterway. I live on a pond, or near, I don't live on a pond, but I live near a pond, or a pond is near my property. And so you got to be careful what kind of fence the material you have as far as visibility. The homeowners association that, for the area that I live in, you're not allowed to have a, it has to be an open fence, like a wrought iron, or something like that, right? And wood you can put like little corner things, but they have to be open. In other words, you can have 3 rungs or 4 rungs, but that's it. And that's for the homeowners association. So that doesn't mean the rest of the town has to be that way. But you wouldn't want to build 8-foot solid wood fences all the way around the pond. You would never see the pond. So, like I said, I was using, and of course, gates. That's probably something that Leah brought up that I didn't mention, was gates. Gates are a pain around here because the soil shifts so much. I have to adjust mine at least once or twice a year. And sometimes it's, cut the latch off and put it back on because the ground's moved so much.
Yeah, I've got some gates that I don't even use because it's such a pain. But
Yeah, so the other area that Leah also brought up was swimming pools. And I stayed away from that because it's already covered. I think it's
State
covered by
law
the
dictates it.
Right, and so why should, the problem with us trying to copy the state is when the state changes, who's going to be watching it, so that we make sure our ordinance changes. So that's why I stay away from it. And you're gonna be required, you have a pool company put up a pool, you're gonna have a fence. Now, you don't have to have a gate, but if you do, there's some things you have to have there, and those are hard to maintain too.
It's gotta be self-closing and.
It's self-closing, which lasts for the first month, and then everything shifts. And the self-closing is one of these things.
You might amend that to pool fence regulations will be whatever the current state law is.
And that's, and
Yeah, that's
good.
again, this is the first attempt, right?
Yeah.
So we can make changes, and that's what I didn't expect that I was gonna write a perfect document, but I wanted to start somewhere. And, okay, so let me see. I put rear yard requirements, side yard requirements, and front yard requirements. We have at least one in our neighborhood that has a wrought iron fence in the front. I think there's two, but I know there's one exactly. And again, it's 4 feet, so, but it's see-through too, so it's not obstructing traffic, not that we have a lot of traffic in our street. I also saw things in Leah's thing that said that you could have a 6-foot fence on top of a wall, which I don't know how tall that would really be. If you had 6 and 4, it'd be 10 feet tall. That's quite tall for a fence, in my opinion. And it's, again, if that's what you want, then that's what you have. I stayed away from wood because of the homeowners association. Wood, my experience in wood when I lived in Plano was unless you stain it and maintain it, the winds we have might be blowing it over, and if you don't stain it, it's not going to last for very long. But again, wire mesh, chain link, hog wire, I'd have to see those. I just put those, I try to eliminate a lot of them, but again, if you guys want those put back in, then so be it.
My thought on the material is everybody out here is on an acre and a half lot or bigger. They can't afford to put up a wrought iron fence, most people. Most people can't afford to put up a pipe fence.
Right.
If they have a welded pipe fence, they've got to hang wire on it or their pets can't stay in the yard.
Right.
So if you do away with hot wire or any kind of welded or woven wire fabrics or chain link fences, you're telling people they can't put a fence up to keep their pets in the backyard, which is not going to work in this
No,
town.
it's not going to work. And it's tough enough for me to keep pets in the backyard, although they've gotten all fatter, and so they don't fit in the 4-inch slats, or through the 4-inch slats. But if you ever have a puppy, I had to put like chicken wire and tie it below, like 2 feet below, because so they couldn't get out.
Yeah.
And of course, being on a pond, I have a lot of other friends that show up, like in my pool.
Yeah.
Rabbits, snakes, I
Ducks.
can't, there's no fence that's gonna keep any of them out. Ducks
No.
can fly over the fence, by the way, and they do, and they swim in the pool first thing in the morning until the dogs go out.
Yeah.
So, all I wanted to do was create a base for us to work on, or work with. You have a copy of Leah's.
This is the first time I've seen it.
Yeah, I had a conversation with her through email, and I know you did too, because I saw some of your comments in there. I'm not trying to make it very extremely restrictive. I just had to put something down in there, okay? And I wanted to make sure, when you start electrifying fences, that we had something said about that. We couldn't do it in our neighborhood, electrify.
Yeah, I've got, one
Couldn't
of my
put
neighbors
glass
has
on the
that.
thing so we could hurt people, that's not the intent.
He's got a fence up, and then inside of his fence, a foot inside, then he's got the electrified
Yeah.
wires to keep his dogs, he's got big
Yeah,
dogs to keep
yeah.
them in.
Yeah, and
But that's not exposed
I
to
don't-
the neighbors, just to his property.
I don't see any of that as being a problem personally, and I don't want to see anybody get fined for doing something like that when they're trying to keep their own pets in order, safely in order. Design and construction standards, I do understand what you're saying. I was only thinking of my lot, because I have to draw from something, and I don't
Right.
have 10 acres of land, and I wouldn't put up a wrought iron fence around 10 acres of land, nor would I put a masonry wall around it either, because I couldn't afford that, or even a brick wall.
Is electric
So,
fence addressed anywhere?
yes,
Yeah,
it is.
under 307, 07A.
Oh,
Okay, so what's the numbering standard here that I'm using. This comes from, I followed our ordinance numbering standard, and I went to the last one and added one. Okay, so that's where this came from. The top, I got that, not from our ordinances, but something that was somewhat official. And then the numbering standard, like I said, you can see 3.06 or whatever, or in our ordinances, but, so I went to 7. I've talked quite a bit. I think I covered everything. I did see some things that Leah put in that I probably missed. Swimming pools, we talked about that. I would follow a higher authority because we don't want to chase them. We probably won't want to do this again until we get done with it.
Right.
And the state will change and we'll be out of stuff. I would also, I would like to see us stay within a reasonable height. I found this last one here, and then I'll stop talking. And the abatement, of course, we need to talk about maintenance. Now, again, I put 30 days down. We don't have to stay there, because if somebody runs into your fence, they're probably not going to repair it until insurance covers or comes along, right? So we can't, fine them at 30 days if, that just doesn't make any sense. So don't go there and say, well, Gary said 30 days, and so we're just going to, we can make it whatever you want, but I had to start with something, because time frames are good when you're dealing with these things, at least I think they are. That was why I put it in there. There was one here, though, it's, I think it's 3.07.007, .d. Barbed wire shall be used to restrain stocks and fence around a commercial or industrial property where the lowest strand of the barbed wire is not less than 6½ feet above grade. That seems weird to me. But I found it in a document, so I said...
Those are
now, if you're talking commercial...
prison fence kind of thing, where it goes up and there's an arm that comes out and they got 3 strands of barbed wire at the top to keep people from, around airports, around prisons, to keep people from coming in.
That may not actually apply to us, but if we had a commercial, some commercial company here, like maybe Keene or somebody that wanted to keep people out
of their stuff.
That's okay. I just saw that somebody had specifically spelled that out, and I didn't know why.
It's more of a security thing than a livestock thing.
Yeah, I would never need anything like that around my house. It would be interesting, but I don't think it'd be fun.
So I was thinking about front yard requirements. No fence should be erected to a height greater than 4 feet above the finished lot width. There's a lot of homes along Parker Road that have lost a tremendous amount of their front yard. The houses have been there for a long time. They were built close to the road, and now TxDOT's taken another 15, 20 feet of their property, and the homes are almost on the road. If I lived in one of those homes, I'd put up a 6-foot board-on-board fence just to give me some kind of
distance from all the traffic.
Break between the traffic in my house. I'd want to be able to block it in some manner.
They did that up here, the big, like 8-foot
Yeah,
fence.
Mo Cartwright put up
Cement.
one of those drop-in cement panel fences when the road got so close to the side of his house. And it's not objectionable. It does the job of, because he's got a swimming pool back there and he's kind of exposed, so I don't know that having a 4-foot regulation is fair to the people.
It may not be enough under certain conditions. I think if you're going to stay with something, it's somewhere between 4 and 8 foot. I don't think I would like to see a 10-foot fence. But that would be me.
Planted a hedgerow on my property across the street because the headlights of the cars coming around the turn shine right in the bedroom window. So if my bushes die, I'm going to want to be able to put something up to block those lights off at night.
That was another thing that Leah also brought up, or maybe you commented, I can't remember who commented on it, but I don't consider trees or shrubs, you can certainly build your own stuff, but I don't consider that a fence.
No.
I understand what you did, because they block some noise and provide privacy.
But it
you're
should
like
be
on a curb.
regulated. If you're planting trees in a row in your property, I don't see why that should need a building permit, a fence permit.
But they don't substitute for a fence because
No.
the town made that mistake years ago when the Sonic was going in. commercial property required a 6-foot or 8-foot masonry fence to separate it from residential property.
Yeah.
And there was a hedgerow between Sonic and that house, which was residential at the time, now it's a car lot. And they waived the fence requirement, and as soon as they poured the lot, all those bushes died. And guy lost all his privacy between him and Sonic because they did away with the fence requirement.
Well, we had somebody in my neighborhood that had a fence, or not a fence, but a bush line around their property. And then a couple of years ago, it might have been that year, we had the cold March, and they all died, and they never replaced them. So now you can just see right through. I don't consider that a fence, but
No.
it doesn't mean you can't put them up. You might, and you don't need a permit.
Yeah.
To plant a tree.
Right.
Unless, you're planting in the wrong spot.
Well, one of the concerns I have with any ordinance, so not just the fence ordinance, but I think fence ordinance is really gonna tweak a lot of people when they read through, or if they get the chance to read through any of these before we kind of massage them into place, and maybe even then after, is to determine what our wants are versus what they really need. Like, what is our purpose for an ordinance for fencing? I understand swimming pools, so we need to abide by the state as far as that's concerned. I got you. We need to make sure that we're not going over somebody else's property line. Got you, yes. So those things need a permit and they need to be checked. I'm all for that. But some of these things, like the 4-foot in the front, I think people moved out here because they didn't want to have to abide by HOAs. So we really need to differentiate between what could be an HOA requirement versus what we really need in the town of St. Paul.
If it's something like a height requirement, I don't know that we should be regulating that, because people out here don't really want, after working here for 9 years, people don't want a whole lot of regulations. So the reason they moved out here was to escape
Get
that.
away from.
And the harder we make it on them, because I drove about 40 minutes today. I drove to town after I saw this draft, and the majority of the fences are either welded wire or chain link. The welded wire's hung on wood or hung on a pipe fence, or some are on T-post, but if you don't allow a wire fence, they can't keep their pets in. I'm thinking that that's probably, of the things that I noticed, the most important thing
Okay.
that would really put a hindrance on what people want to do with their property.
And then cross fencing within, so do we want to regulate the fencing on the outside and the fencing on the inside? So if you put up a dog run, or in here it mentions a temporary garden, but people, it may not be temporary. It may be a permanent garden wall that they've put up. Should that be regulated within their property?
I don't think so. I've seen people put up, you talk about a garden and other things, but I've seen people put up, like, if their son or daughter is a pitcher, they'll hang something, a
Yeah,
pitching
the
cage.
batting
yeah.
batting
And
cage, yeah.
again, if it's in your, middle of your backyard, I don't care. I really don't.
How tall are those? So
Well,
that
they're
would be
probably
enough?
bigger,
Yeah,
you
they're
might
pretty
want some,
big.
but if you restrict, how much you, I think in the backyard, unless you're up against a road, I guess I wouldn't be opposed to having a more solid fence. It would cover most of that if somebody thinks it's an eyesore. But, okay, so
And I think the main thing is if we're strong on, if you've got a fence, you've got to maintain it. If we put the strength of the ordinance in that, and if they want to put an 8-foot fence in and the wind's going to blow it over, well, okay, you chose to put up an 8-foot fence, but you're going to have to fix it. I think if we put more emphasis on enforcing fence maintenance, maybe a little bit less on what kind of fence they got, but we got to enforce the maintenance of it. So once it's up, it's got to be maintained. It's got to be, solid. It's got to be doing what it was intended to do.
And with that, you said the building official is authorized to approve it and stuff. Would that really be the zoning enforcement officer, Travis?
It'll be Travis,
It'll be Travis.
but he's only here once every 2 weeks, so if the town personnel aren't driving the town on a regular basis,
Yeah.
a lot of things can slip through because he can't catch everything.
I didn't
Driving
know,
for
I didn't know
2
what
or
to call
3
that person, is why. I
Yeah,
put
he's
it
a
in.
code enforcement officer, but it's hard for
If
him
somebody-
to.
if nobody's
Chief
looking,
building is, it sounds, makes it sound very important.
if nobody's watching the place, then of course, nothing's
Yeah,
enforced.
I mean,
So that's, I made that up, but I was thinking of Travis, and I didn't know
Yeah.
how often he was here.
well, and back on, I'm backpedaling here.
Did I say something else?
On the second page, under enforcement,
Um,
it says the building official is authorized to making all necessary inspections. He may enter any unoccupied premises at a reasonable time. There are laws about that. You might want to get the wording.
I think I looked at that 2 or 3 times after I wrote it. I mean, I wrote this.
Travis can't enter private
No,
property without the owner's permission. I don't think so.
I think I put that in front of where it says he has to contact them with 24 hours in
Yeah,
advance.
he's got to be able to see it from a public right of way, from a place he's allowed to go, but I don't think he's allowed to enter
Yeah.
private
No,
property.
But again, if we're only doing the external, then
Yeah,
he'll be able to see that from the, yeah.
Yeah,
So
and I agree that
we need to tweak
So,
that.
I think, we can talk about this more if you want. Like I said, I'm totally open. I threw something down. I didn't really know what the mayor wanted, except that they said,
Right,
here's.
I think the 2 points, if I recall, one was barbed wire. The other was a fence leaning so badly that he's having to weed eat instead of mow.
Okay,
So I think that's maintenance, and then the barbed wire or electrical fence. I think those are really good things to cover.
okay.
Because that's a safety issue when it comes to kids or whatever running around. I think that was their concern, barbed wire, electrical fence kind of thing.
Okay, so what I would like to do, I'll suggest something, is I don't mind being described, but I want you guys to send me by email what your suggestions are. So that the next time we can, I don't know how many times we get to do this before we have to actually send it to the council. So we might want to think about that too. I don't know if there's a rule about that. Do you know if there's a rule about that?
Just one revision should be enough.
Okay, so what I'll do is look, I will send out an email to you guys, including, I think we only have one alternate, right?
Leah?
Yeah, and I don't know.
Okay, so here's the thing, I was thinking about this too, because I haven't seen Megan except in the store in about a year, and that was Freddie? Trevino, I haven't seen him in probably 2 years. So who else do we have? I guess I didn't think okay, I know, okay. So I will make sure, my first, Leah and you guys, and Carrie, I'll get my stuff, and if you'll just give me information, I'll collect it, and I will give it back to you after a period of time, like before our next meeting. Maybe if you give me something, and in 3 weeks, I'll give it back to you, or something like that. I'll send it back to your email.
Awesome.
And you guys tell me either, yeah, you listened to us, or no, you didn't listen to us. I mean, you're not gonna hurt my feelings, unless you call me names or something. But you know what I'm saying. I'm trying to make progress.
Yes.
And I don't want to, I'm not
This is a
trying
good attempt.
Yeah,
I'm not trying to offend people. I don't want to do that,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
that gets us nowhere. And you're right about these other things. I live in one area, probably the only area that has a homeowners association, so I know what I gotta
It is,
stick
yeah.
with. You guys don't.
Yeah.
And I don't care if chain link is something you want, we'll put it back in.
Okay.
I just know I can't use it in my neighborhood.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's okay. We don't have to have one type of fence. The entire town of St. Paul, that's kind of crazy.
You guys still have an architectural committee?
We do. And actually, it's the guy who's on it now he works in, I think he's an inspector in Richardson, in the city of Richardson.
Okay.
So,
There's one more point I want to
Okay.
bring up, just to highlight, that was in Leah's, and it's about signage and advertising on the fencing. So just keep that in mind as well. She has a little blurb in there about that.
that's a very good point. But I saw that in here, and what it reminded me of was you came up with last time.
Yeah.
Okay, so what somebody thinks is a sign, I may think is graffiti.
Yeah.
So I wasn't sure whether that belonged in here or not, but.
And maybe it doesn't, maybe it belongs in the graffiti one, and then we can work it from there, because that applies to any public-facing surface,
That means
I guess.
anybody, like even somebody who has a church across the street might be hanging. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, and on Leah's, she's got materials like vinyl, rope, string bamboo are prohibited, but there's a lot of 3-rail fences now that are made out of synthetic material, they're not wood, they're not steel.
No, and
Yeah.
I've seen some good ones. I'm not particularly fond of pure white, but that sticks out like a sore thumb. But I've seen some very good vinyl type
Yeah.
fences. So I don't know that we should eliminate that if in fact they're properly put in the ground. They're probably more bendable. They can bend a little bit, maybe they won't just turn over. All right, but anyway, that,
Okay.
I thought, that's my proposal, if you guys are okay with it. I wasn't really expecting this to be the one and done.
Yeah.
But that's crazy.
I appreciate you and Leah working to come up with some solutions. to
So,
that.
I tried to represent Leah as best I could, because she couldn't be here, she was at work, so. I did get a copy and I made a bunch of things. I think I got most of them. She probably will tell me you missed some. Oh, we did talk about property line, or she did, and I think you got involved in that. You can go right up to the property line, or just inside it. The thing is, you can't, if you put it on the property line, you can't expect your neighbor to repair his side
No.
without an agreement.
Right,
You're responsible for it.
right.
You can't really go over the line and into your neighbor's property, but that was already stated somewhere else.
There was a lot, or not a lot, it was mentioned in yours and hers as well, as far as visibility, fencing, and having maybe a solid wood fence and the visibility. But we have ditches here, so it's not like, roads and sidewalks and stuff you might have. Like, we have pretty big ditches. I wonder if that's really an issue of visibility when you pull up to a stop sign. You can still see down the road, but in yours you mentioned,
We have the pond, and so if we had 6-foot fence or 8-foot fences all the way around the pond, you'd never see it.
yeah, and that's probably why y'all have an HOA, but
We have
behind your house, when it's a neighborhood, a subdivision, I can't think of it, alleyway, oh my goodness. An alleyway, I can kind of understand that, because there's a lot of alleyways you try to pull in and out of, you can't see anything, but that's one that it'll be interesting to try and figure that out, because
We have, in one of our ordinances, there is a reference to constructing things that block the line of sight getting in and out of driveways. I forget which ordinance it is, but there's some reference to fences not being right up against sight lines coming out of a driveway, so somebody's not pulling out in front of somebody.
So it needs to be back so far from the right of way?
There's some kind of type
Yeah.
of setback visual barrier clause
Something.
that's in there to prevent people from inadvertently being distracted backing out of the driveway, not seeing who's coming down the road.
Yeah.
Them not seeing you coming out.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
And I wonder if, we talked about Travis, is there any, could we pull any information out of him, any experience relative to that stuff from him? Or no?
Yeah, we probably could. You want me to contact him to see?
Yeah, just because, if he's got some insight, we shouldn't do the opposite.
When you send these out to him, if you'll send all mine to that address instead of my
Sure.
town address, my
Yeah,
town
no.
address comes to my phone, that goes to my printer.
Yeah, no problem, I will do that for you.
And I can forward both of those to Travis
Okay.
with some notes on them
I
and see
just-
what his feedback
I
is.
just think with his experience, we probably should, because he's familiar with the town, if there's something
Well,
that,
he's familiar with what legally he can enforce and what legally he can't enforce, and how he can enter properties and what he
Oh,
can
that's
see
good
and what he
too.
can't
right,
see.
so we probably shouldn't try to do something that he can't do legally anyway, right? All right, so I will take your feedback, and I will give it back to you after you provide it to me. But I will start with an email to all of you to kind of talk about it. If you feel free to bounce back and say, oh, by the way, Gary, you forgot this point, you forgot that point. I think that way we'll move forward and see where it goes, I guess. All right. Again, if there's something you forgot and you remember it after you leave, you can always reach me. And I do thank Leah for her efforts and yours as well, because I saw it. I couldn't figure out after a while who hit the red and who hit the blue. I was reading it, we're like, okay, now I lost. Who's the one doing it? Where's this red? Okay, now I gotta find the meeting agenda. All right, so are we prepared to end this discussion?
Yes.
All right, so we'll try to take some action at the next meeting, but, you know, we'll see how it goes, depending on how much feedback you guys give me. All right, so the next discussion was on update and pending, 4.3, update on pending specific use permits, which
Do I need to get Scott?
I think so, yeah,
Okay.
because the only one I heard about was what you said. So that means there must be more. Any comments from you guys about fences? We didn't have a fence ordinance, that's why this came up. And so we thought we would take it.
We were charging for fence permits, but then we had no rules about fences.
Yeah, I actually got a fence permit, 5 years ago, I think. Pretty fast. It wasn't on the perimeter of my property though, it was just in the backyard.
Okay.
So I don't even know if we needed a permit at the time, we couldn't, I don't know. But, no, I think I would agree that, you know, we, you know, especially, you know, even us, you know, we moved out here just because there's fewer regulations, no HOAs. And I live over in Lakeview Manors, and there's all sorts of fences, but most are just open, you know, they have either horses or cattle or whatever.
I think the biggest issue is what you mentioned, is the maintenance. You put a fence up and it's leaning 45 degrees or 30 degrees, and you never do anything with it, then eventually it becomes a hazard to somebody. But, all right, so Scott, we moved to 4.3, update on pending specific use permits.
There's really not a lot to provide, just kind of give you a real quick update. Obviously, you met Joel this evening, pastor for DFW Connection, and the town approved special use permit, I believe in 2023 for the church. They changed the site plan up a little bit, which has triggered the need to amend the previous SUP. And hopefully that's something that we get before the P&Z in April, not hopefully. That should happen because there are some deadlines that need to be met that were in the current SUP that's coming up relatively quick.
Okay.
There shouldn't be a lot of effort put into it. I mean, it's going to have to be expanded a little bit. In the previous SUP that was approved, there's a lot of contradicting statements in it that just don't make sense, that need to be cleaned up. There are some particular items that council is paying attention to, the current council, that they've talked to me about, such as a retaining wall or buffering, potential of, did we look at the flooding conditions, and there's a lot of dirt that's been moved in on the property that will have to be looked at a little bit closer. I think currently there's about 3,000 square yards of dirt that's been moved onto the property. There's been discussions about potentially 11,000 square yards of dirt. But those are all issues that you'll be able to get past and we'll have to look at. Lighting's another concern that's come up that you'll have to look at, or line out in the SUP. I really can't think of any other significant issues that need to be addressed other than those that have been mentioned to me. And there just needs to be definitely a little bit more clarity in the SUP that was established back in 2023. But I think that's something that can happen pretty quickly. Joel's been very patient with us moving forward. I know he's probably frustrated, but quite honestly, there's a lot going on, and you pick and choose what's priority at the time, and we need to move his SUP forward. So that needs to happen. And I'm not certain who's going to take the lead on that, because I won't be here after next week, so I'm assuming someone else is going to pick that up. Also, everyone's familiar with the 3990 Lakeway SUP for the church. That SUP's, I think, it expired in 2011. Is that when it expired? So it's been a while, and they've been operating a church at 3990 without the appropriate zoning in place. We have worked out a draft development agreement as far as working with Lakeview Shopping Plaza and moving forward with issuing another SUP. We sent the draft development agreement to Nasser Malik, who is the president for the Lakeview Shopping Plaza, about a week or 2 weeks ago. Council extended the deadline for Nasser to execute the development agreement, or at least give his feedback to us, until I believe it's tomorrow, actually. But we received a letter from an attorney representing the Lakeview Shopping Plaza requesting an extension of that SUP until May 5th. And that's a decision that council has to make. They can either not take any action at this point and wait till May 5th, or they can take a formal vote. It's really left up to them what they want to do. The development agreement we put together is pretty tight, and it pretty well outlines everything that will be in the SUP. There's been a lot of effort put in to developing that development agreement on my part, and Clark McCoy, who is the new town legal counsel. It originally started with a letter of intent with Lakeview Shopping Plaza that had a high-level 60,000 elevation view of what the SUP and working collaboratively into entering into a development agreement. There's really a three-step process. First, we entered into a letter of intent that we would work in collaboration in developing a development agreement that would lead to an SUP. So we got past the LOI. Now we're in the development agreement process, which has a lot of details in it that Lakeview Shopping Plaza representatives need to review and see if they agree with it, or if they have any comments or changes they want to make to it, and then present that to council. So the goal is to hopefully have a development agreement executed between the town and Lakeview Shopping Plaza. And this is what they're asking for by May 5th. That's what the other side's asking for. I can't tell you how council feels at this point about that. Council's last action was, we'll give you 7-day business day extension, which I believe ends tomorrow. Council's aware of Lakeview Shopping Plaza's request to extend to May 5th, and they need to make a decision on what they want to do. But that SUP, quite honestly, if everyone gets to a point where they agree on it, it's pretty clear cut. And not a lot of work will have to go into it, but it will be presented to P&Z, and eventually it'll move your recommendation to council. If there's a lot of lifting, and I don't want to call it heavy lifting that needs to be done at this point, it would be the DFW connection point SUP. I don't know who's going to pick that up. Not a lot of rocket science involved with it. It just needs to be cleaned up, and there needs to be some additional language added to it. Obviously, there's been a lot of talk about the church down here. I think everyone knows that Seventh-day Adventist had purchased that property. Over a month ago, I sent them a packet of information as far as what they need to submit as far as an SUP. Haven't heard anything from them since. And the packet I sent them was a pretty detailed packet of what they need to be prepared for. They haven't reached out to me. It's been well over a month. So I have no idea where that SUP is at this point. You do have another church in town that I think it's called a Resonate Church. That's over here by the Coventry. You need to really think about reaching out to that church, and they need to have an SUP. Because my understanding is they're still operating as a church, but they don't have an SUP. So if you're going to make all your other churches have an SUP, they need the same thing. That was the only church that we knew that still was not complying with town regulations. And that's the update at this point.
Okay, thanks.
Do we have a current ordinance that's got a formula for how much bleed through the lot lights, parking lot lights?
Yeah,
can have?
there is, in your building codes, there photometrics as far as, how much could bleed over the neighborhoods, but what, if I recall right, because there's been a lot going on, but in the development agreement, we were asking for controls actually to limit the height of some of the lighting. We also talked about controls of, shielding it as well.
Yeah.
Adjacent to residential neighborhoods. On the boundaries, like retaining walls, that's a decision that, I think that's a negotiating tool, where I think you do need to protect your residential neighborhoods abutting that type of facility. But it may not be retaining walls. You could do living screens that would be just as easy to implement as well. But the key to living screens are going to be, you need to include, some verbiage where they're going to be maintained, and if they're not maintained, who's going to go in and maintain them, what would be the mechanism where the town can step up. DFW connection point is going to have a retention pond, how they're referring to it. There needs to be a language in the SUP that speaks to, how that pond's going to be maintained. Because usually when detention ponds or retention ponds are built over time, they build up. You get a lot of silt built up and no one pays attention to them. Things grow up in the center of them. But those are things that you can work out with Joel and his engineers. Fairview does a very good job of outlining in their ordinances how retention ponds and detention ponds should be maintained. Alex is aware of that. She's aware of some other codes that Fairview uses that would be similar to the living screens and making certain that they're maintained. So those are things that you need to be thinking about as you move forward, but they're not that difficult.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I have a question for you.
Am I able to ask a question?
Sure.
So some of the, we have a civil engineering firm, and all of the drainage, all of the things that we've seen that know our questions, but there is some balance between us spending money to complete some of these studies and to answer some of these questions before we have an SUP to, in other words, it's not responsible for me as a pastor taking money from all my people to spend a lot of money if we don't have even guarantee of the SUP. A lot of times the SUP comes first, and then with the knowledge we're going to do these things in the agreement. So that would be the only thing, is giving us clarity of what needs, the timing of when we need to have these things, which we plan on. Even the lighting, we've got the whatever y'all got, give us will be good, but we've done everything. Our architect has designed all of that already with the whatever the code is. So anyway, any guidance coming back to us just beforehand we would love.
Well, I can tell you from seeing several of these things that show up, I've seen them from basically on napkins, not quite napkins, but, and we can't, if it's not to scale, it's very hard to make a decision on that.
All of ours are to scale.
I didn't say yours wasn't, but you asked for some pointers, so
Okay.
if it's to scale, because when we present it to the council, they're just gonna
Yeah, our
pick us
architect
apart for
will
not having it.
have that in row.
There's a parking thing too. Make sure you've got enough parking spots for that.
We've got enough parking for the zoning, so that should be no problem.
And then, operating, when do you operate as far as when are your peak times?
Okay.
So we know, have you got enough parking for peak times? Obviously, you won't be using the parking like peak all the time, I don't think, anyway.
And
But
there was something about parking as well as pulling in and out, because that was another thing in the last one was,
Yeah.
they had parking all the way to the front, but there's no way you're gonna be able to pull in and out safely with
Yeah.
people moving in those parking
So we have
spaces.
with our architect, we've had I can't remember what they call them, but the zone, the sight lines, and we've had that discussion as well. And so hopefully we'll be able to address any concerns when we bring it as well.
Yeah, I think-
I don't know, but I would assume with all the dirt that you had brought in there, that there is some type of silt fencing back there to
Yes, there is.
contain it?
And with all the wind, we actually have a professional coming out to redo a couple of them that have been blown down. So all of those things, we are well aware of the situations, and so we're trying to be good neighbors.
So are you thinking about a living fence as opposed to the expensive masonry wall?
We are going to abide by everything that the town council, that we're told to do. Obviously, there's cost go up, and so we are going to probably, as much as we can get approved, we're going to abide by whatever the town council does. But yes, that would be a great, if that's good, we will probably ask for something that I anticipate at this point. But again, we plan on doing everything to code. We plan on doing everything that is asked of us, and so hopefully that will be something that will, we think would benefit both, all parties. Living screen looks better than a wall, especially in our opinion, and so that would be our preference. But again, we just want to be clear that we're trying to come in and do everything right with. We've got engineering firms, we're trying to get all our ducks in a row so that there's no concerns on our side.
Are there plans for an on-site parsonage?
No, I wish, but no.
Okay. I guess if you have any questions, we all have emails for the town of St. Paul, so you can reach out to us if you got a question. We would do the preliminary review of it, the plans and all that stuff, and then we'd have to pass it to the council, who would make the final, the SUP stuff. And I remember working on that. I don't remember the wording being messed up, but who knows what happened to it after it left us. I don't know. But that's okay, doesn't matter. Any other questions? Okay. All right, and with that, I guess, unless you guys have something you want to talk about, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
In favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we are adjourned.